Greetings of the day, everyone. My name is Heaven, and I welcome you all on my podcast, Unredacted Conversation. Today, we have Kassi Burns with us. Let me introduce her. She holds great value of diverse experience in e-discovery, more than a decade and a half. She curiously talk about technologies. She is founder and active member of various groups which are dedicated towards betterment of society and legal tech. She is an active podcaster. She is a great speaker. She is a full blogger. She is data detective, and list goes on. She is strongly motivated by a desire to teach non-practitioner about e-discovery and legal community about Web3 and emerging tech. Welcome, Kasi. I'm very happy that I'm going to do podcast with you today.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to come along.
Thank you so much to be here, and I'm sure that me and my viewers are going to have a lot better understanding about e-discovery after this podcast. For our audience to know more about you, can you please tell us a little bit about your education, career journey, and since you have diverse e-discovery experience, can you explain what e-discovery is in one line?
Oh, okay. Uh, eDiscovery in one line. eDiscovery is looking for buried treasure in documents and data. That's a very nice hook of a one-liner. Uh, a more robust definition, I would is as parties are engaged in litigation, they have to share their documents with each other to sufficiently build their case. Because we use so much data now, it's very complex exercise to collect, review, and produce that information. So it's an intersection of legal and tech, and that's a space that I've been working in for over 15 years. So just a quick highlight of eDiscovery. And then my professional background, I went to law school at Tulane, which is in New Orleans. In 2000, I graduated in 2006. And I worked in-house right out of law school. So this was again like 2006, 2008, working in-house for a franchise company. Did not know anything about eDiscovery. And the company I was working for was a startup company and it ended up going into bankruptcy. And I was the last employee in 2008, which was a horrible time to be looking for a job in the legal market. And that's when a recruiter reached out to me about a document project, reviewing documents, just one of many people. And I never heard of this whole doc review world at all. And I was just very happy to get a paycheck. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And that was really my entrance into eDiscovery, which I think is a similar theme of many of my contemporaries my age, where you kind of fell into eDiscovery. It wasn't a career that I think people knew about. And I enjoyed it. I mean, there is a, kind of a dullness sometimes to doc review projects as an attorney, but I enjoy learning more about the technology aspect of it. Um, and I think that my instinct was always to follow the technology, like have my career path follow the technology. So I went from being a doc review attorney to an assistant project manager to a project manager to a project manager of the 200 people, being very closely engaged with um, the service provider. And I just knew again, and this is when TAR, so technology assisted review, was really first starting to be used. And I knew and heard very much similar concerns that we're hearing now about generative AI, that all the legal jobs are about to be taken away. And I knew it was very important to continue to follow the technology. So I was working as a project manager for special counsel and knew I wanted to get more on the tech side of things, and ended up working for a service provider that had proprietary software and managed a Let's Support People, which, I mean, Let's Support People are your power users of any platform. They really know the ins and outs, the best way to use any review platform. And I was there for 5 years, and that's really where I learned my tech chops, really had to understand the nuance of that platform, because again, that company has proprietary software. And then we also onboarded relativity into our environment. So having to get up to speed, get my team up to speed, give them the skills they need, just what the whole process of like, oh, you have to as the application for advanced analytics into relativity. I didn't know that. Like I just thought it all was like plug and play, but there's a, relativity is a little bit different from other platforms. There is more configurability to, the environment. So really kind of like digging in and learning that. And it was challenging at times because I was managing people who were infinitely smarter than me on the technology side. They could field map like no one's business. They could, clean up GT search syntax so quickly, where I would be like, all right, like, where's this open brace? Where is it closed? But they also had the muscle memory of doing it all the time. And it was very easy to let myself get psyched out of like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be as great as these people. But you really have to ignore those voices of doubt and just keep going. And it was really there that I learned the more tech side of things. Um, Moved on to another company, Cobra, where I was managing again, um, and more client facing again. And then I ended up where I am now at King and Spalding, where I'm
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
working.
Today I think network issue. So, can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Yeah, that is. I was saying that is pretty amazing. Like something to look up to, and also talking about legal. I was following Legal Week this year, and it was bigger than ever. A lot of tech companies, great speakers, and I agree with you. What you said on social media, it was giving tough competition to Comic Con this year, and
Mm-hmm.
it
Right,
it
right.
it brings me to my next question. How well has eDiscovery joined hands with tech in recent years?
How has e-discovery changed with tech in recent years? Is that right?
Yeah.
I think that that's a really good question because I feel like eDiscovery has had a suite of tools that most service providers have used and packaged in their own way. And it's largely text-based tools. So, it's things that from like the old content analyst company that was later bought by Relativity that like they created, a mechanism for email threading and near dupe analysis and using LSI or latent semantic index, which was the base bone, the basis for the old like TAR 1.0 workflows. And then, then you had maybe 10 years ago, SVM being more common, the active learning out, type of workflows. They're a little bit more elegant, a little bit easier. I mean, TAR is not an easy workflow for multiple reasons. It's not just the math part of it, but also just like from the litigation support side of it, all of the things that have to go on the back end, to make things. And I just remember when the active learning came out, you didn't have to rebatch things all the time. It just happened behind the scenes. Like that was a wonderful thing because I would see my lit support people like killing themselves, like staying up late to like make sure the system was updated and make sure new batches were out. And that was all having to be manually done. Um, now the active learning I think really helped a lot. And now I'm starting to see other tools really augment, I think, what a lot of service providers have by lineal having like lineal images, which is amazing, but it's kind of crazy that there's now kind of like one provider out there really showing how you can use like image-based searching, which to be honest, images have been in e-discovery for a long time and image-based searching has been around for a while on Google. So I think that we have worked very hard as a profession to really hone those workflows that we've had for a while. And I think because of that intense focus, sometimes people are unwilling to kind of step out and go, is there a better way to handle this for maybe emerging data sources? And a perfect example of that is text messages or short messages, which I'm pretty vocal about. Like, I think that a lot of the tools that we've been using that have worked so well with email and have worked pretty darn good docs with text, it's not really that great for short message data. It's just it's not robust enough text. The language is more nuanced and more subtle and can vary. The way I communicate in a thread with my husband is different from my girlfriends who I've known for, 30 plus years, from my other girlfriends. You all have your different lexicon. And And I think that there are technologies that we've been using forever on email that are really well suited for that. Or even just like the function of review workflow. A four corner of a document where it's a cover email or a letter with attachments, that's a different kind of a workflow from like a chat thread or a Teams group where people come and go. So I really think that people are just now, I've been saying this for a year and a half or so. Like we are like trying to shove a square peg in a round hole. We need to kind of pull ourselves out of the really great work that we've done and not say all data is going to work under this rubric. We have to go pull ourselves out of the weeds a little bit and go, if I were to go to a hackathon and explain this is the issue I have, hackers, how do I deal with reviewing and producing short message data, not having the baggage or the training and the history of email workflows. How would you do it? And I think like we just have to be thinking outside of the box more, be more creative. And I do think we deal with logic a lot, we deal with the law a lot, but creative problem solving is always, going to be a very powerful thing. So I think with the advancements that we're seeing in the large language models and the things that ChatGPT is being built upon, I think there's a potential for that. I don't think it's going to be a quick switch, and I don't think it's going to be one or the other. I think it's going to be us like working and refining, and really I'm just hoping that everyone can kind of have an open mind and go, how can we use these emerging technologies, in a way that's maybe a little bit more innovative for like this more challenging data source. Like again, short messages is very challenging for us as a profession. I do not have such an ego that I'm not going to say like, oh, dude, I got this. Like we're all struggling with it, I think. And I think that, taking the opportunity and saying, okay, group, like let's kind of collectively come together and talk about how we may want to tackle this. And I think maybe the timing is right where the those kinds of technologies that we're seeing and like the, analysis there that maybe can pick up on the nuances of the short messages, I think is something worth testing out and playing around with. So, and I think that's something that I found very exciting about Legal Week is I felt that there were people who are instinctively, you know, tend to distrust a new thing coming out. Oh, it's just a repackaged old tech. I think there was like genuine curiosity, genuine interest because we are seeing more people out there talking about launching tools that use like LLMs and natural language processing and Russian training, all that kind of stuff within the confines of eDiscovery. So I think we're where we were. I think with tar and email threading, 10, 15 years ago. I think that that's going to start happening. I hope.
Yeah, I agree. And over the last few years, especially post-pandemic, so it's been a pretty aggressive collab of tech and e-discovery. No doubt it's making things easier since we are talking about tech. So I would like to know what is the best tech you came across recently or legal or otherwise?
I think that I've seen a few demos of tools that are really modeled very similarly again in ChatGPT that I think analyzes the data, gives an output, and I don't think it's going to be something that's going to replace review because to me, like that, there's a very compelling use case for that kind of say, I'm going to write a summary for you, or I'm going to do an outline for you. Because a lot of times we just need, like, we don't need a blank page. Like, just the fact that the generative AI can kick out a preliminary outline or summary, I think, of course, with all things AI, and we know this is discovery professionals, you still have to QC the results, right? You still have to validate and verify. A lot of people, attorneys, lit support people, they have a blank page is very challenging for a lot of people. I tend to be fine with it because I immediately start like broad categories, subcategories, and my brain just starts going. But a lot of people, they're told, I need you to write a memo. It'll take them forever to get started just to get started, right? And it doesn't mean anything about, their actual like ability to analyze. It's just that they have to get over to get started. And I see generative AI as being a very powerful tool to help people get started. And they may get an outline and there are 10 bullets and they like 8 of the 10 or 6 of the 10, but it still is a starting point. So I see that being very compelling. And I think a lot of like some of the Copilot 365 things I've seen, especially in the context of Excel, I see very exciting from the perspective of us managing the data that we get. Kevin, I know you probably know that as you know, when you get data to load into a database, it's not always clean, it's not always organized. You have to clean it up, you have to do field mappings, you may have all of that stuff. Like data is not perfect. It is not always pretty. Like we have to look at it and clean it and refine it to make it best suited so it gets analyzed as well as possible by the tool. And I see being able to type in a question into Excel saying, please prepare, an analysis, a quarterly analysis of these sales numbers. Like just being able to engage with data driven type of platform, I think it's compelling. So if you think of it, a pain point again is to me, QC data integrity in a database. And it can get challenging when you have data coming from multiple sources and all that kind of stuff. We can use generative AI to help us in an operational sense and not just the client data analysis, but what where are some areas of like these are anomalies that don't line up with other things, like you have all these text fields for all these DT search indexes. There's one other text field that has a lot of text with this new data and it's not tied to this index. You know what I mean? Just I just feel like there are ways that from an operational standpoint, as the data becomes more challenging, it becomes more challenging for people managing databases. So I would love to see the technology used in that way. I don't think I answered your question as directly as maybe it was, but like that's kind of like my hope of seeing us really push the envelope in self-reflecting on. We're pretty good with client data. Let's talk about like how, from an operational standpoint, we can improve things using these emerging tech, emerging tools coming out.
Yeah. So, as we say in India quite often, भूत के पाँव पालने में दिख जाती हैं, which translates to coming even cast their shadows before. Like newest tech is literally showing how awesome eDiscovery is going to be. And I recently attended University of Florida Law Conference and got an opportunity to hear you on Metaverse there. And I was mesmerized. I'm sure that viewers would love to hear that too. Can you please tell us about Metaverse a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So, metaverse is one of these emerging, concepts coming out that the term metaverse, comes from a phrase that was used in a science fiction novel called Snow Crash, where it's really this immersive virtual reality space that infinite number of users can be in it and they're all experiencing the same things concurrently. And what you do is memorialized in that space. So if I cut down a tree and I come back and you come to the tree that I cut down tomorrow in the metaverse, you're going to see that it was cut down. So it really is kind of
Hmm.
always occurring, never refreshing, never go like restarting its start, right? And so that's like the big, like ideal. We're not there, obviously, even from like an infrastructure hardware um, bandwidth perspective, we're not there. But from that, there are hints of things out there that are happening that are creeping towards the metaverse. We're seeing it more in augmented reality, so not virtual reality where you're completely immersed, via Oculus or maybe 2D virtual reality, which would be like Second Life or Decentraland. Where like Decentraland, you can log in, you don't have to have an Oculus, you can just log on with your laptop and have an avatar and walk around the land in Decentraland, for example. Virtual reality, or not virtual, but augmented reality is, maybe you have glasses or maybe with your phone and looking through your phone there. are digital things superimposed. Now, a very basic idea is just a filter on Snapchat or Instagram or whatever, but we're really starting to seeing that augmented reality envelope getting pushed. So another thing about Metaverse, where it ties into what I'm about to talk about, is it's interoperable across multiple apps. So if you think about Wreck It Ralph, the Disney or Pixar movie where the arcade game characters were able to kind of like commingle at night and go to different games, and like in theory you'll be able to do that in the metaverse, and we're already seeing some examples of that. Like I was able to create a digital avatar in Ready Player Me, and I was able to then make that avatar available in a different application and make a recording of myself as that avatar and record it. So you're going to have instances where you're going to be able to buy clothes from, like Chanel or something, or buy makeup, or buy sneakers from Nike or whatever. And you're going to be able to associate that with your avatar. And that avatar is going to not be app dependent, it's going to be you dependent, that like ties to a wallet in a sense. And so that's kind of the weird commingling of virtual reality, digital, augmented reality, NFTs, potentially blockchain technology, kind of all together. Now, what will the metaverse eventually be? We don't know. There are visions of that, and kind of the hype around the metaverse has cooled some. I'm not particularly surprised. I feel like again we're too far from having sufficient technology, hardware, infrastructure, software to be able to have all consumers be interested, right? But we are starting to see more examples of filters and like consumer experiences where you can, I posted about it on Instagram yesterday, where skin brand you can take an image of yourself. This is a business to business tool, so it's not something I can go and engage with right now, but I could have an image of myself. It would assess state of my skin, if I had wrinkles or dryness or aging or whatever, and then it has the capability to recommend skincare products, but then even analyze how your skin would look using those skincare products after like 60 days, 90 days, or whatever. So it's really going to, I think, start intersecting with ways to improve the customer experience, especially as more and more people tend to buy online as opposed to going into stores. So, but at the U of F conference, I talked quite a bit about digital twins, which digital twin is a perfect example of a metaverse. Digital twin is it really carries that idea of we're making an exact replica of whatever, and it is going to maintain itself. And so some examples of digital twins are cities. I think Shanghai, there's a Finnish city or a Swedish city, and like Chattanooga, Tennessee, of all places. But the benefit to having a digital version of the city is they can model out, if we build this high rise, how will it impact traffic? How, if we built these, large, apartment buildings, or this huge factory, will impact pollution. So it really lets you, predict or model out, the harm to the environment. And a lot of these technologies, there is that focus on ESG initiatives, like where are you ethically sourcing, what's the harm to the environment? How can we minimize that? Those kinds of things. So, yeah, just an actual real life example of kind of a metaverse thing that's out there. So, um, yeah, so there's.
It most definitely is futuristic. And you explained, I'm speechless. How do you do it? Do it?
I just think about this stuff all the time. My poor husband and family, they're so tired of me talking about it. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to talk to other people about it because my husband is just like, oh my God, I don't care.
Yeah. I find you very active on social media platforms. You write very useful articles, post points. So along with your job, how do you manage?
For me, it's the social media kind of twofold. One, I do have a professional curiosity towards it because I see social media feeds as being an active learning process, right? Like, how are my behaviors being rewarded by the algorithm? Which think about it, like, how is the behavior of a document rewarded by a relevancy algorithm? So, what do I have to do to engage with this platform, whether it's how often I post, when I post, what I post about, the type of posts I share, how I engage, how quickly I respond, how I engage with the people who engage with my posts, how I engage with people who show up in my feed. Like, so there's a general curiosity in my perspective to that. But I also, at the end of the day, like there are things that I know I could post about that I know would maybe give me further reach, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do things that are really clickbaity. I'm not going to do things that are like really controversial just to get the attention. Like I know that those are methods that people take. I'm not interested in that. And really, the content I share is pretty much just like thoughts going in my own brain. And maybe I'm a bit of an egotist for saying this, but I figure if I see something and I think it's interesting, I feel like other people may as well and really want to share it. And if no one likes it, and then someone comes up to me later saying, "I really like your content. I like the art. I like what you're sharing." Like that's enough. Like I get it. I get why people like they like my stuff or they get whatever. I'm not. It's as much of like a professional curiosity, but I've been on LinkedIn for a while and I've seen kind of like a weird progression where when I first got on it, probably in like 2010 or something like that, it was more people just posting articles that I liked because it let me kind of like read interesting things about the e-discovery profession. Very much where it was more salesy, company posting events and things like that. But there really weren't people posting about what's going on in the world. People were, but not really. And I really wanted to get like that feedback of like, post an interesting article that I can read that's not showing up on my Google feed or whatever. And so I really just started posting things that I found interesting, because we're seeing more and more articles of e-discovery showing up kind of in pop culture. I think that's interesting. Like especially like the past year, 2022, there are so many big cases that really metadata things really started becoming vitally important. So a lot of it's just, thoughts I have in my head. I work by myself. I work at home. So, it's probably just maybe an example of this is what happens whenever you work at home and you don't have like a water cooler buddy to talk to. I'm just talking and engaging, with my community via LinkedIn. So, and I if I there are times when I'm too busy and I'm just not going to post, and I could pre-schedule my post, but I'm really bad at that because I'm very much like, oh, here's a good thought, let me just get it out. So, but I would just encourage anyone who's kind of interested in it, put yourself out there, put whatever out there that you would have no problem standing by to, your boss or your grandmother or whomever. But don't feel like your voice isn't important enough because someone is going to appreciate what you have to say, And I really feel very important, about, and then get what's that it's not everyone's bag, and I totally get that. But if it's something you're interested in but you're too insecure about, don't worry about it. You're going to be harder on yourself than anybody else will. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something we all would like to learn, like balancing. And I would say you are super awesome, Kasi. I know it's not just metaverse. You talk a lot about blockchain also. Can you please tell us a little bit blockchain and decentralization and
Mhm.
how can we make the legal world better with it?
Yeah, yeah. So, the blockchain concept has been around since, my goodness, 2008. 2008, that's when I began my e-discovery career. Someone named Satoshi Nakayami, I think I got the last name wrong, wrote a white paper about blockchain technology. Pretty much like, here's what I think would work. And really, it was a response to what was happening in financial institutions and the mortgage crisis, everything kind of crashing. And there became a situation where people weren't trusting certain financial institutions, right? Now, the challenge with digital money is how do you keep another person from saying, well, I'm going to give Heaven $20, but I'm also going to give Cassie the same $20. Like, how do you, in a digital way, really keep it to being one version? Once you give Heaven the $20, you can't give Cassie the same $20. Well, what blockchain technology is a peer-to-peer system. It's based on the idea of allowing trustless exchanges, meaning I may not trust you, but this process, this protocol is so tight clad that I know that there's not any funny business. If you give me that $20, you're not going to be able to get the same $20. And it is an immutable ledger, meaning it is append only. So you can only add line. And it's really, let's break it down really simple. It's just a really big Excel spreadsheet that has a limited number of columns, and you can only add rows. You can't take rows away. And it's not saved in one space. Anyone who gets access to the server will save that server, that blockchain, that ledger on their server, contemporaneous to all other people out there. Now, the benefit to that piece of it is it makes it more impervious to cyber attacks. So if someone attacked my server and it brought it down, it wouldn't matter. There would still be a copy of that ledger out there with other people who hold nodes of that ledger. Now, how are you able to put a transaction on a ledger and have it be trustless? Well, because they're using cryptography to create hash values to record those entries. And there's kind of a bounty system of the person who gets to put the transaction on the ledger gets it because they solved an equation faster than someone else. And that's called proof of work. And so you have to have like these very powerful GPUs that it's like a bounty goes up, and the first person who has their computer and their system solve the problem, they're the ones who get the transaction on the block, and they get paid for putting it on the block, and they're part of it. So it's not like one person has control and they may be able to cook the books. Like, that's not happening in this situation. And as more diversity occurs by the proof of work miners, and that's what we're say mining, it's people out there trying to solve the problem to be able to put the transaction on the ledger. The more diversity there is, the more impervious it is to fraud, right? Because like one person doesn't have control of this. So why is this important to eDiscovery? Well, there are things around blockchain and cryptocurrencies being, based on blockchain. People will sometimes store their digital assets in a wallet. And the wallet can be a cold wallet, which is really like a jump drive or an external server. And a hot wallet is a software-based wallet, which again, that's just where your assets are saved. Now, to kind of create stronger security around those wallets, there are things called, we don't have passwords, we have seed phrases. And so it's usually a series of 16 words, but that's kind of like your very robust password. And that's how you get access to those assets. So let's think about it from, one of the oldest legal, areas of law, trust in the states. If you're an trusted estate attorney and you don't know about digital assets, and so you don't know about hot wallets or cold wallets, and you don't think to ask your client, do you have any digital assets? Where are you saving your seed phrases for your, people, your heirs? You're going to have a really expensive book. Because if you die and no one knows what those seed phrases are, no one's getting those assets. They're just going on. And there have been, stories of oh my gosh, we had this hard drive that, or this file server that was missing, or was thrown away, or lost a seed phrase, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's interesting. And then there are also elements of you can actually post text to Bitcoin blockchain or images, and it's pinned only, meaning you can't get rid of it. So what happens if there's PII or PHI or revenge porn posted? Like that creates like data privacy issues, security issues, copyright issues, all of these issues out there. So um, it's just like a whole new world. Of course, a ledger is very, it's an Excel spreadsheet. It's kind of like a field map, right? So there's going to be interesting metadata. There's some digital assets called NFTs that point to an image on an external location. It could be a URL or it could be an IFPS. What happens if there's lot rot, So, and also, if we had to collect and preserve that information, how are we going to create and preserve that relationship with an external source? It's not within, the infrastructure of like a Microsoft system where you have your teams linked to, a Word document. So there's just a different way of engaging, and it's decentralized in that asset on your wallet is what gets you access to maybe different websites. So you're not using a traditional email address login, you're using your wallet to log in. And that's the decentralized part. You're not relying on a large centralized company to give you access to other systems. You hold keys to your access to other systems.
Yeah, super. I would love to see it coming in action and making e-discovery better and more secure.
Mm-hmm.
AI can be of answer of one of the problem, ML can be of another, blockchain can solve one. So what are recent challenges that e-discovery is facing and how we can we overcome them?
I those we're talking about the fun stuff like blockchain and metaverse and AI, but honestly, the most challenging thing is mobile data and short message data, because we're seeing because of COVID, more people started using their mobile devices for work, or maybe the gloves are off and maybe the polite like I'm not going to ask for your mobile data if you don't ask for mine. I think like that's gone, and I don't know if all companies are sufficiently taking the time to review, like, hey, let's pause, let's reassess our retention policies, let's reassess maybe our BYOD, or bring your own device policy. Maybe we don't want that. Maybe we need to reassess our hold notice and preservation letter and collection workflows to make sure we're properly addressing short message data and what we're doing to making sure we're fulfilling our federal and state obligations to preserve it when needed. And we're seeing, in the courts of this is getting a lot of scrutiny from from the courts, from the bench. And the unfortunate thing is by the time you're in front of a judge defending your process, like you really need to be thinking about it before it gets to that point. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. You really need to be thinking about it now. Um, and of course, the rules do allow for, they take into account whether or not it's intentional, it's bad faith or good faith, and things like that. But there's just been a lot of movement in the courts related to spoliation and like the short message data, all of that. And I think that attorneys need to realize that there's so many apps that their clients are using that they may not even know about. I know that a lot of Web3 or blockchain focused companies, they're using things like Discord and Notion and Airtable. And like, if you don't even know those are apps, you may not even think to ask about it. And you should, of course, always be asking open ended questions. But, it's just the more you know, more you can appreciate that there's just so many apps out there, and you really have to be thinking of that early on, and just like the obligation to collect and review, just all of that takes more time than I think people realize. Like they think short message should be easy, but we know it's not. It's complicated for a lot of different reasons. So I think as much as the cool stuff is really kind of fun to think about, we really got to get our arms wrapped around the short message data. Either, once we get any discovery, but before that, and really working with clients and reminding them, like, you got to think about this now before it's kind of, too far gone.
Yeah. Since we are talking about future so much, I'm so curious and want to ask, like, how do you picture future e-discovery? Let's say after 5 years or so.
I mean, this is my hope. We have an economy that relies on data. We are professionals who have worked closely with data for a long time. And I think in many ways, we are kind of this silent profession that most people don't know about. And so they don't realize the power that we can bring to the table. And so my hope is that e-discovery professionals are able to find ways to broaden our skill set into other areas. So maybe it's working even closer with case teams. We're not just brought in to review, we're really brought in at the very beginning, and we stay with them all the way, to trial, maybe to help with strategy, because they're very compelling strategic decisions that you can make when you understand the data really well. But I'm even seeing outside of the construct of just the core legal profession, there are a lot of discussions around AI ethics. One example is New York City passed a law that any company that uses AI to make hiring decisions, even if it's just selecting who to interview, they're supposed to get that AI technology audited. Now that hasn't like gone live yet, but we use AI in an adversarial setting. So we're always, if we're using active learning or TAR, we're always thinking about the richness of the data set, the sampling for, kicking off our review. We're always QC. We're always looking at stabilization. We're always looking at that. And depending on how you're using it, sometimes you have to disclose it to the other side. Sometimes if you're just using it for prioritization, you're not cutting off, you're at least tracking that for your own records in case it comes up. Like we know we have to have our book in order. I could see us being a great resource as more and more regulations start rolling out, because I think that the New York law is probably not going to be the first one. We're already seeing other generative AI being scrutinized by, regulatory bodies. It's starting to happen a lot, over in Europe. So I see e-discovery professionals being nearly like, poached for other areas that our skill set is so unique and would be very useful. That's kind of right. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think we're really an impressive group of people, and we have an impressive set of skills that, as a whole, I think, can bring a lot of value to a lot of other disciplines.
Ah, wow. I so like to go in future already. I'm sure
Right.
I'm sure it will help e-discovery and made it lot easier. I was reading one of your article on soft skills, and I understand that it helps as much as tech does. Soft skills. Can you please tell our viewers what are the soft skills and top five soft skills which you would like to share with the audience?
I mean, I I think one soft skill is having that inclination to always QC your work product. And I think that this is where thinking, having self doubt can sometimes be a great skill. Because I am that person who I'm going to double check and I'm going to triple check, especially when it comes to data, like searches I set up. I will triple check it. I will wake up in the middle of the night and check it again, And that a lot of that comes from a level of did I mess up? And that's where being insecure can sometimes be a good skill set, because having that inclination to always know if I'm doing this and there are these points of failure, these are the QC steps I need to take. Having that in mind is really important. And that's a really hard skill set. That the skill set is just more like your brain is automatically going to like want to check. It's a really hard thing to teach people. So just be aware of if I'm running a search in this way, how can I break it? And let me just double check it. So that's one. And two, like communication skills are very important. So I think understanding your audience and catering your communication style to your audience is very important. Anticipate client questions and address it in a response, in a deliverable. I'll even take it back a step further. If a client asks you to do something, and it could be on the technical side, or it could be me, talking to an attorney and making sure I understand what the legal ask, or the analysis they want. If you're reading back to them what you're going to be doing and you're reiterating it in an email, it's like you're working at a drive-through. You're reading the order back to them. So if there's a misunderstanding, they can catch it at the very beginning. So no one's wasting time. So you get that clarified. One. Two, when you deliver it back, always think of how I'm going to make that person's life easier, but also how am I going to make my life easier. So one, always think in bullet points. Thinking in bullet points, people are busy. Don't give a wall of text. Have headings. Have it all well organized. That's huge. Then people can skim and read things easier. But also, if there are things that you want their feedback on, like, do you want us to do this for you? Or don't ask, what do you want us to do next? Give a recommendation. And all things being equal, give a recommendation that will make your life easier, right? And maybe that my life easier is the timing, or maybe it's I can get the deliverable in this way and it will take a lot less time to do and it'll be a lot less complicated, or whatever. Always be thinking first, how am I going to make my clients' life easier? But also, and that is like giving them options that they can, yes, I agree with that, because your clients have decision fatigue. They're being asked to make decisions all the time. Excuse me, ma'am. No, sorry, that was one of those. They're being asked to make decisions all the time. So if you can make a recommendation and the only response they have to give is, yes, I like that idea, please proceed, they are going to love you. And you can give that recommendation. It makes your life easy because it's like the better thing from like a technical lit support way, even better. And then that's really where you start building the trust, right? And then finally, my last thing is always stay on top of communications with clients. If you tell them you're going to give them a deliverable and you're an hour away and you're going to be delayed for whatever reason, proactively reach out to them, and that makes your life easier. So, yeah, that's soft skills are very important, and yeah, it's a game changer in clients wanting to come back and work with you. To me, more than anything else, is a soft skills.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Soft skills play such an important role, and it is easier to learn for people who does not come from technical background. You also deal with all aspect of e-discovery, and in India, we mostly do tech part of e-discovery. So, what advice will you give to legal professionals working on tech side, like processing data, doing production, requests, etc.?
I think the more you can understand of where you fit in the bigger picture, the more you can appreciate why, if this doesn't get wrong, or if I don't catch this, how it will impact things down the road. I think that's vitally important, and so I think it's really important. Like, and that's not an individual responsibility, in my opinion. That's like management responsibility. The manager and the leadership of the company should be explaining at least, like, hey, if you don't index this data that just exploded, these documents aren't going to be found by anybody. Like it's like they're not even there. So, or if you don't do an all custodians field every time, it's going to have a huge impact to searching and in negotiations with other. So, like, and if this happens and we don't find out until after discovery closes, like, it's a huge problem. I think just explaining, and you don't have to explain everything, but I think when it comes to processing, like like what's really important, right? You have to be able to search on the text field. The all custodian field is very important. The parent date field is very important. Any of the relational metadata is very important, because having them understand how that ties into searching, and if searching is inaccurate, what impact that has to the bigger case. Because a lot of times, if you're just really like, I have this one thing and that's it, you don't realize the true impact of something. And if it's not explained to you, how would you know? Like that's not fair to the individual. So the better you understand the bigger picture, the better you are in catching red flags, troubleshooting it. And I think like that's the important thing. People need to have sufficient understanding so they know how to trouble spot. It's like when I'm working with an attorney and teaching them just, running search terms, I go all the way back and explain, okay, let's see how we set up like the search index and what goes into that and what that means. Because attorneys may not realize, well, these noise words aren't indexed and there's a search term that has a noise word in it, like it's going to totally skew my results. They don't know about it. They don't know to think, why is the search term like getting weird results? Like if I see a search term with a weird result, the first thing I always go to is like, does it include a noise word? Did the vendor use noise words? Like that kind of a thing. So it just makes you better at solving problems.
Yeah, that most certainly is very valuable advice and will propagate to better way of exercising tech in context, free discovery also. And since we talk about India, my next question is, how do you see India or Indian resources working in legal tech? Can you also please share one good thing and one of improvement?
Yeah. I actually managed attorneys in India, my last job, and really enjoyed the experience. I, very interested in learning things and very invested, which I appreciate. I think one challenge some of them sometimes had is being uncomfortable correcting a manager and saying, this isn't going to work for this reason. Or, hey, Cassie, maybe you told me to do that, but this is a reason why that's not a good idea. And maybe it's because they know the data better than me or not. But luckily, my direct reports had, I think, gotten out of that cultural shift and had really were very, very good about they realized it wasn't being rude. It wasn't, upsetting the chain of command. It really was, hey, Cassie, I think you might want to know why that's not a good idea. Because I want to be told if I have an idea and it's a bad one, I want to be told it's incorrect. I'm not, most managers are like that. And I think being really good at not saying these are my instructions and I'm sticking to it no matter what, having that agency and that confidence to say this is a better way of doing it, or hey, I have this idea, we should do this. Because I think sometimes there's a cultural leaning of do what you're told and that's it. And discovering and engaging with people, and I think that's really important. And some of that has to come from management. Again, like you have to get people that are maybe not used to being, having the horizons broadened where that's okay. Like that needs to be explained and also fostered in a healthy way, right? So I think um, having that ownership on the management side and having that willingness to kind of go out in the comfort zone on the attorney side, I think is very important. But I think just as any other attorney anywhere else, you really have to just give them the skills to be able to thrive because they're great attorneys and great people there as there is anywhere else. So
Yeah. Thanks so much, Kasi. For me, it is worth of millions, and I'm sure viewers will find similarly valued too. Advice comes from good reading, study. So, can you please share five must read books? I am looking for must read recommendation for legal professionals and tech enthusiasts.
chain in the law and It's not very long. It did a very good job of providing an overview. The second book is Metaverse by Matthew Ball. You just want to get a sense of what all it would take to get to that and the scale of it. I think it is very, very interesting. It's a pretty read. You can flip really fast. Another book that I found interesting is called Uncanny Valley, and it's a woman who it's a memoir of a woman who is an English student. She had a degree in English. She worked in publication and literary publication. She ended up just to make money because she wasn't making any money working in publishing. She worked for startups in Silicon Valley in like the aughts. So really when all these unicorns were really starting to build up. And you see her, someone who doesn't have like the hard skills, she has the soft skills, like what her experience was like working in that situation. And having worked for a company that developed software, I found that very, very interesting. A lot. She's a woman. She has the soft skills, but she doesn't have the hard skills, and how that's maybe not appreciated. But also knowing what's happening with some of those companies, I found personally like very, very interesting. So, and then I read two other books. Again, these are all like crypto kind of focused books. One is called The Cryptopians, and it talks about the genesis beginning of the Ethereum blockchain. Again, I found it very, very informative and helped me put in context some of the technology so I could understand it better. But it also highlighted there's a lot of like brand ideals behind Bitcoin, but at the end of the day, there are people with faults, like involved in it and seeing like, okay, this is like fallout that happens. It's going to happen anywhere, right? There's no like utopian technology that's going to fix all our problems. There are people with faults, and you're going to have to deal with that regardless. And then there was another one that I read. I love like true crime. This one was like white collar crime, and I think it was called The Missing Currency Queen, and it was a woman who ran a complete scam, like an MLM Ponzi scheme scam, selling coins, selling digital currency that didn't exist. She just made it all up. She's taking money from people. So she's gone missing. We don't know where she is. But like those are some books, and I can send you a message later, Heaven, and send you a list of all of these. So yeah, they were all pretty quick reads. So I know we're all busy. It can be hard to get a book, snuck in from time to time. But those all pretty cool.
Yeah, I have noted these actually. For sure, I am going to read these books. And also, it will help me to think better. So, we talked a lot about future too. And one thing we know about future for sure that it is unknown future. Being human, we are afraid of and what we do not know. So, what is one thing that you are afraid of if it comes true?
Um, I mean, the power behind an immutable blockchain, like it's never gonna, if it's built across enough spaces, like an immovable force, right? And then you have these smart contracts, just software enabled systems that just kick off. And if it's tied to a blockchain, like there, it's just like a perpetual motion machine. And if, if a smart contract is created on a blockchain that's robust enough and it does harm, how are we going to stop it? Like that to me is kind of terrifying. So, um, and I think it just begs the question of being really thoughtful. Like, and this is something I personally need to dig more into smart contracts, but like, just because it's a smart contract doesn't mean it's perfect. At the end of the day, it's code that could have weaknesses to it, or it's code that could have impacts that we're not even aware of. And it just, if the purpose of it is, if it goes on in perpetuity and there's no stopping it, and then it's tied to a blockchain, that to me is kind of terrifying. It's just like how you got to blow up all of the servers to get it to stop, I guess, or you fork it, or you got to do a hard fork, or it's a little terrifying, to be honest, you know.
Yeah. So we hear a lot about ChatGPT these days and using it recklessly, which I'm sure arise security alarm unknowingly. Anything you would like to advise people related to ChatGPT precautions and how to
Yeah.
make best of it or any tech they are going to use?
Yeah, I think, one is just be aware there is automation bias, just because a technology gave you an output doesn't mean it's accurate. There are a lot of reasons why it may not be accurate. And I think just being mindful and careful about how you use it and what those inputs are.
Hmm.
So definitely don't want to be inputting anything proprietary, confidential, or privileged into like the open it, if it's not enterprise, if you're just logging into the general website as a general user and you're just entering in proprietary, privileged, super private information, it's just going to go out there and it's going to get used for training data, which is not great, right? So don't do that. Also be aware that generative AI content is not copyright protected, right? So if you're writing content, if you have a blog and you're going to use generative AI for all your content, use generative AI for your images, you're not going to be able to, claim copyright protection for that stuff. So just, be aware of that. And that maybe that's fine for some people because we're creating so much content these days, and not all content is created equal. That's fine. Deal with that. Now that copyright protection, that'll be kind of like a sliding scale. But if you're really just getting an article output and you're just posting it and you're getting an image and you're posting it with that, just be prepared. Like it's not going to be something you're going to be able to copyright protect. So
Yeah. So thank you so much, Kasi, for answering my questions patiently. I have asked so many questions. Anything you would like to add, suggest, or advise us?
I think follow the technology. It's something I've done from the very beginning. Don't feel overwhelmed, or if you feel overwhelmed, don't let it deter you. I every day feel like an idiot as I learn about this stuff, and you just have to keep learning. It can be very easy to get overwhelmed because it feels like there's so many new things coming out every day, but there is a lot of noise. There's a lot of this stuff that we're not even going to be thinking about in 5 years. So really think about learning, like if you're interested in it, learning the core stuff and not feeling like you have to learn everything. I think a lot of legal professionals, a lot of discovery professionals feel like they have to have absolute knowledge of everything. This is such an evolving space. Companies are going to pop up and drop out. You just have to do your best to stay on top of it and just get caught up if you can. We're all busy, so give yourself a little bit of grace there. But I do encourage you to um, learn what you can because it's only going to help you in your career down the road.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough, Kasi. It is such a nice experience for me, and surely viewers would be glad to hear you as well. In the end, I would like to share one fact with you. I'm not sure if you are already aware of it or not. There is one very ancient city in India, famous pilgrimage, which we fondly call Banaras or Varanasi. People visit this city of light and learning to attain salvation. This city also goes by the name of Kasi. It is awesome and must visit place if you travel to this side of world.
I oh no, that before heaven. Oh my gosh, you have to need the info on that. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
Yeah, so please visit place if you ever travel to this side of the world.
I would love to. It's much more exciting. The Finnish word for plastic bag is Kassi, Kassi. So I will take the Indian like ancient city over the Finnish word anytime. So that's exciting.
Wow. And I would like to wrap it up with a big, big thank you. I appreciate you, Kasi, for all the learning and light you brought. So I'm glad you came to us. Thank you everyone for your time and patience. I'm sure it was worth it. And if you'd like to make any suggestion or request, feel free to mention it in the comments. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. And please name the person you would like to see on my next podcast. And from the next podcast, I will mention the best comments or suggestions. Please show your love, support, blessing, like, share, and comment and subscribe. So do not dare to miss on podcast.